My name is Delicate Sive. I'm Infonel's Communications Associate. We are glad to have you on board. So maybe you can just give us 1 minute or two as we wait for a few more people to join us, and we shall be starting. Thank you so much for being with us here.
Now, the refugees in Nachi Valley Refugee Camp in Isinyo District have taken the lead role in the conservation and protection of the lake, the biggest water source to the camp and the surrounding area. Now, the refugees in Nachi Valley Refugee Camp in Isinyo District have taken the lead role in the conservation and protection of the lake, the biggest water source to the camp and the surrounding area.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deli Sive. I'm Infonel's Communication Associate. We are so glad to have you on board. So Infonel is a cross-border group of geojournalists with a mission to uncover critical stories on water and environment in the Nile Basin through science and database multimedia storytelling. We are a small team of about 7, so I'll not be able to introduce them all in the interest of time, but you're going to meet some of us in the course of this launch. We are so glad to have you on board. Just to set up a few ground rules, housekeeping rules. We'd like to make this session as interactive as possible, so I'd kindly request each one of us to mute our microphones unless you're making a contribution. You can also type your questions in the chat box and also use the raise hand emoji so I can be able to tell if in case you need to make your contribution midway. We encourage you to use the hashtags Shrinking Lakes and Nilewell when tweeting, and you can also tag us at Infonile and Water Journalists Africa, and then you can also use GRS Biodiversity. I'm going to share this on the chat bot. Feel free to use them. I'd also like to bring to your attention that this launch is live on our YouTube. I'm going to share the link, and it's also shared on NileWell. So I'm going to share the link where you can access it through our platform NileWell. That is the platform that is hosting this event today. At this point, allow me to introduce our co-founders, Annika and Fred. They're also our directors at InfoNile. So Fred, welcome on board. Feel free to take the stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Derek. I want to share my slides. Just a minute. I hope, Derek, you can see my slides. Is that right?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Okay, so thank you so much, Derek. My name is Frederick Mujira, as you have said. I'm the team leader at InfoNile and Water Journalists Africa. We want to welcome you all to this webinar, and we will, in particular, look at shrinking lakes in the East Africa. And this is a project that we worked on, as you will see. Thank you so much, Derek. You all talked about InfoNile. I just want to probably say again that InfoNile is a cross-border group of journalists. We're about 780 geo-journalists, and we're based in the Nile Basin, 11 countries in the Nile Basin. So we do several things. We build capacity for journalists, we connect them, with scientists, and we do several investigations, cross-border investigations. And we publish these investigations in different languages and media outlets. InfoNile is a flagship project of Water Journalists Africa. Water Journalists Africa is a network of journalists in Africa who report about water, which I started in 2011. Yeah, so some of you may know about the challenges that are there in the Nile Basin. One of them is increasing environmental crisis, which we focus on. We will look at climate change, for example, water scarcity, biodiversity, and when we are writing these stories, we want to focus on these challenges. Again, as InfoNile, we have identified a challenge of disconnect between journalists and scientists, and this is one of the challenges that we want to solve. We bring together journalists and scientists, so then we bridge the gap. We want them to work together. But also there is a big challenge of insufficient resources and training. This is why we train. We do, webinars like this one. We have had trainings online and offline to make sure that we impart, we give journalists the knowledge to write stories that can be, help the audience take action. And we have trained, we usually train journalists in data journalism, to make sure that all the stories they work on have data in them, right? Data visualization, everything. Yeah. So then they can be of interest to the readers. Our approach is that we identify a theme of common and cross-border importance. And in the past, for example, I've looked at biodiversity in transboundary lakes, plastic pollution of Lake Victoria, water scarcity, and several others that we've worked on. So then we source credible data, cross-cutting, across the countries like we do. We are in 11 countries. We make sure that if it's a transboundary project, we have cross-cutting, data. We call for pitches. When we go through the applications, we pick those who go through, we mentor them, data journalism, environmental and science journalism, and then we let them publish, their stories. Some of these are translated, and then when they publish them in their local media houses, some in on radio, TV and print, then we get these stories and create cross-border multimedia projects. And then also we create actionable interactive maps that go with these projects. You'll see some of them in our stories. So in the past, we've done several projects. You can see all of them right here. Like I told you, plastic pollution, biodiversity in lakes, in the Nile Basin, freshwater biodiversity. These are several projects that we've worked on. I just wanted to give you a summary that we have enabled the production of 302 database multimedia stories as we work on it. So these are in 5 years for InfoNile. Yeah. So also we have our stories have been published by over 106 media houses in 12 languages and in 14 countries. These are included for the 6 online platforms, 30 radio stations, 21 newspapers, and 9 TV stations. You will wonder why we emphasize on radio stations, because we want to reach out to rural audiences. We don't want to remain in cities, but we want to reach out to rural audiences that take decisions. I mean, implemented decisions. Yeah. So our strategic focus is on connecting scientists and journalists, influencing public action. So then to conserve the environment through stories that we write. Again, we communicate data stories through mobile youth content. I will show you, for example, how we do it. For example, we communicate data stories through mobile youth content, and we have done this for some time. Publishing and having stories through WhatsApp chatbot. This is service that is the first of its kind in the Nile Basin. So then we are offering knowledge and content on water and environment in Nile Basin. Some of you guys have used it and you know how it works, but users ask questions on WhatsApp, related to water in the Nile Basin and receive feedback, answers aggregated from our various credible media and scientific partners. But also we have done mobile magazines. Some of you guys have read content on mobile magazines. We have also done, we want to in future to do WhatsApp courses, so then we can train journalists and communicators and scientists in different courses around data in science and communication, to reach out to more people. Well, later at the end of this webinar, someone will take us through NileWare. NileWare is our new platform that brings together scientists and journalists to produce knowledge. I will leave this to someone who will take us through at the end of this. But I want you, when you're going through, you pay attention to the connection with the scientists, journalists and scientists, trainings, and access to research resources. So this project that will take you through the shrinking lakes. These are lakes of East Africa that are slowly receding and reducing in depth and drying up, as you will find out from our reporters. And we worked with a group of journalists and we brought them to you, so then they can take you through what they found out. We'll also later bring a scientist to take us through this. But we will find out that when journalists went and spent months working on this project, you find out that these lakes are shrinking. Why? Because of one, climate change, which you identify. Also, that is leading to season of flooding, of these lakes, and also floods bring in siltation, and then you find the depth and size of these lakes reducing. Then human activities, especially farming, urbanization near these lakes. Also the growing fish population. The growing fisher population. If you look at so many lakes in the region, you have so many fishers. So then they catch even the young fish. These are the points that you will find out from our journalists. Also, illegal fishing equipment, which we identified in some lakes in Uganda and Kenya. Weak enforcement of the laws that are supposed to cover this, increasing demand for the lake resources, especially fish, and the improved access to domestic and Congolese market, because there's a lot of the big market for fish in Congo. So you find that you find the challenge that fishers fish, and then all this is taken to Congo, and then also unrestricted access to young fish because of the weak laws and enforcement of these laws. So what you would also find out, just a minute. Okay, So how are we reporting on threats to biodiversity in lakes, which we have done for some time? So we engage local communities, journalists and scientists, using national and cross-border data to support the stories, analyzing data and visualization of the trends in the data, and translating stories in regional languages, which you will find out from all our journalists as they present their projects. So this project, Shrinking Lakes, started in 2020. We supported 14 journalists from 7 countries in East Africa, and on East Africa and Eastern Africa, and part of North Africa. And then under this project, we carried out data journalism training and mentorship in partnership with our partners, Code for Africa. So then later we did the cross-border investigation that includes these 7 case studies from 4 countries. And also we had 7 data wranglers from InfoNile and Code for Africa that helped us visualize, interpret, put in context all the data. And also we had 17 maps and data visualizations in the bigger story, the cross-border story. So you can see this is one of the maps that we had. This is how we use data visualizations in our stories. This is satellite imagery of one of the lakes that we worked on, Lake Wamara. Also satellite imagery of one of the stories that was done by Fred Mwasa, that looked at fish in Rwanda. You will identify all this in our projects. So today we are bringing you some of the journalists that we worked with on these projects, and they will be speaking to you live. So these are the stories, for example, this is a story from Uganda about the refugees, a lake in the southwestern region that is being conserved by refugees. We also looked at Lake Nakuru, fish in Rwanda, most of the lakes in Rwanda, then Lake Wamara. Ronald will be here to speak about what he found. Lake Manyara in Tanzania. This is, we also worked on a story on Lake Albert about oil and effects on the lake. Jipe. So we looked at Lake Jipe, and we're in particular focusing on Jipe tilapia fish, which the writer here will also take us through, Janet. Okay, Janet. Now the other name may give me hard time to pronounce it. So I just want to thank you so much, and for coming in to listen to the journalists that worked on the stories, and also the scientists. And also I want to thank our funders. Our main funders here were GRS Biodiversity Foundation based in USA, and also our partners, Code for Africa, that we have worked with since we started InfoNile 5 years ago. So I just want to hand you over to Purity to take us through, tell us who's coming in next. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Fred. Our next speaker is from our partners, Code for Africa, that is Sakina Salem. Sakina is a graphic designer from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. She works as a data visualization designer for Code for Africa. She'll tell us more about Code for Africa, who, as we've mentioned before, are our partners. She has contributed towards award-winning articles using motion graphics, maps, data, and visualizations. One of those projects she has worked on with us is Sucked Dry. And it is important to know that Code for Africa uses flourish.studio, which is the same platform we use, as it has a variety of visualizations such as charts, maps, and these are important in storytelling. Sakina Salem has also trained many journalists on how to use flourish.studio to present data and satellite. So over to you, Sakina.
Thank you very much. So first and foremost, I would like to congratulate Anika, Frederick, and the whole InfoNile team on the launch of this incredibly engaging report. And it was the pleasure of Data Lab from Code for Africa to support you all in this project. So let me just introduce Code for Africa, or CFA for short. We are a network of civic tech and data journalism labs with a team in 20 different countries. We provide digital tools and solutions for citizens, or in this case, journalists, so that they can access actionable information and data. So from CFA, 4 members of the knowledge team were involved in the Shrinking Lakes project in various ways. We began by supporting the journalists in obtaining data pertaining to this. We collected all that data, including the data that the journalists themselves shared with us. We scraped it and cleaned it and prepared it for analysis. This clean data is now available on Open Africa, which is the open data platform managed by CFA. So it's available for reuse. Ultimately, we used all this data to create the visualizations that Fred showed us earlier on. For a lot of them are you can see them all in the article. And most of them were created on a platform called Flourish, as mentioned before. And Flourish has a lot of templates to create these nice interactive charts. So for example, the map that they showed right earlier on with the fish occurrence in East Africa. So how is that map useful? We know that when we are reporting environmental issues, both location and time are major factors in reporting. So this map not only shows where the fish were found in and around East Africa, but also how the population of the fish rose over the years, especially in the late 1900s. And more importantly, and maybe even more worryingly, we are starting to see a plateau in the last several years, in the last 10 years or so. So policymakers and citizens, anybody who looks at this map can decipher not only what the problem is, but where the problem can be best managed. So, and it was also a great Kickstarter for all the rest of the stories that come, because it really shows the impact on the economy and the people around that area. So the other tool that is particularly useful in talking about environmental issues is satellite imagery. As the old adage goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Sorry. Google Earth. Oh, sorry. Somebody want to say something? Okay, no. Okay, sorry. Let me continue. So Google Earth is highly resourceful in this regard, right? It is a repository of satellite images from around the world that goes as far back as 1984. So you can get high quality images, historic images of anywhere around the world. And you can also mark locations. You can measure distances and even elevations. So for Shrinking Lakes, we decided to use the high quality images to create our own time lapse and show how Lake Wamala that we saw earlier on, how that lake floods and shrinks over time. And if you look closely at the 2015 slide, you'll see that there's a small settlement growing there as well. And what that does is it adds human perspective to a visual as well as the whole story. So these are some of the techniques that we used to help support InfoNile in their story. We hope that you find this story engaging and insightful. Thank you very much. Verity?
Okay, thank you so much, Sakina. Feel free, guys, to have, in case you have any questions, we shall ask at the end of this presentation. So feel free to type in your questions in the questions tab, in the chat box, sorry. So Our next speaker is Ronald Musoke. He was one of the journalists in this project. So Ronald Musoke is a multiple award-winning journalist based at the Independent magazine in Uganda. He reports mainly on the environment, natural resources, businesses, human rights, among other topics. He has over a decade of journalism experience, spanning since 2012. He has a bachelor's degree in arts, English and communication skills, a postgraduate diploma in environmental journalism, and he's currently finishing his master's degree in diplomacy and international studies from Uganda Matayas University in Kozi. So Ronald Musoke, I hope you're here.
Yes, I am. Finally, I made it. I think I might have to start with a complaint. I think we were given a wrong link. So we've been waiting for the last, I think 35 minutes somewhere else. We just struggled to know that we're in a different forum late. And so we joined a bit late and I don't know how to start. But let me just talk in about this story. I started doing at the beginning of 2020 after winning the grant from Infanile and the funded GRS. Sorry about that. So I and my photographer started by first and foremost, I started by doing a bit of research. Actually, not a bit, but a lot of research before traveling to the region where this lake is. It's actually about 80 kilometers to the west of Kampala, and so I visited one of the landing sites, which is one of the most vibrant. It's called Katiko. Really, my point of traveling there was to see for myself what is really happening along the shores of this lake. I mean, the issues that I had already seen in my some of the research reports I had read from non-governmental organizations and civil society. They were pointing out issues of encroachment, issues of poor fishing methods. So that was my reason for traveling to this learning site, which is called Katiko in Mityana district. And so very quickly, I was able to talk to, I think, not I think, but I talked to fishermen, I talked to officials who, like civil society officials, but also leaders of, representatives of leaders of the fishermen. I was able to meet them and so talk to them. The other bit which really intrigued me was the mysticism about this lake. I think this lake is one of it is sort of shrouded in mystery. When you talk to local people around Mityana and other neighboring districts, they hold it in awe. They think it's a spiritual lake. It has supernatural powers. You can't just do funny things on it. But then I was also surprised that even with these mysteries around the lake, there's a lot of degradation going on. So I didn't know what was real happening until I talked to the Mityana district fisheries officer and the district natural resources officer again. But also talked to fishermen, and I was able to sort of draw a line where the I don't know what I should call them mysteries, but also some of the beliefs these people hold were in I found it a bit ironical that they held these strong beliefs about protecting this lake, or not fearing not to injure it or to degrade it, but at the same time there was a lot of degradation going on. And when I talked to other officials, they then told me that what was happening was a mismatch between the expectations or the pressures of livelihood, the need to get livelihood, yeah, and this other issue of protecting the lake. If they were willing to, or they are now willing to do all these sort of things of destroying the lake simply because they want to meet their livelihoods. There's a lot of pressure from a growing population surrounding the lake, but also there are people who are buying land around this lake to do all sorts of things, all sorts of developments, from agriculture to tourism. I was able to see people who are trying to put up what do they call beaches, and the clincher for me was when I visited a gentleman, a middle-aged gentleman at one of the spiritual grounds, which he claims is I think he said that's where the lake begins from. Of course, that was erroneous, but he claims that's where the spirits of this lake, it's like the headquarters of the spirits of this lake. And seeing things happening even there sort of confused me, because he was also complaining, saying that even when people think this is a spiritual ground, there's also encroachment still going on. He was, I think, facing pressure from an investor who wanted to clear the site, this culture site. He was also complaining about because I think at that culture site, they're supposed to keep the fire burning non-stop, but he was also complaining that he was struggling to get firewood because forests around this culture site had been cleared. Yeah, but moving onwards, after I wrote the story, what happened next anyway? I was able to talk recently to both the natural resources officer and the fisheries officer, and I found that I think the authorities around the district, particularly Michena district, Michena district, I think shares the biggest portion of this lake. The other districts are, I think, Gomba and I think Kasanda, if I'm not mistaken. They were carved out of Mubende district. So when I talked to the district fisheries officer, he told me that I think over the last 2 years, which is after I wrote the story, and I'm not so sure whether I should claim credit, but after this story ran, the authorities have since moved to bring about a certain reforms, particularly on the lake. They are now proposing something like a closed season. They are now engaging fishermen, sort of where they've been fishing like for 24 hours non-stop or around the year. They are now proposing something like they go on the lake for 12 hours and only in the night. During the day, they keep off the lake. And if you calculate that along the year, you'd now get something like 6 months. So they want to use this policy as a way of growing back maybe some of these replenishing really the lake, the fish in the lake. Outside the lake, the natural resources officer has told me that I think the Minister of Environment and Water in Uganda has moved. They are now working with the district. That is Michana. They've, I think, given them pillars to help them demarcate the shoreline. I mean, this should be able to show the people where the lake shore ends. I think there's a buffer of about 200 meters, but the problem is that it's still a bit of a struggle because people bought land legally closer to the lake shore, and they claim to have the titles which are they legally acquired. So they feel like they can't just get off their pieces of land unless government compensates them. So I think there's a bit of a struggle at the moment, but the positive is that government wants to demarcate and clearly show where the shoreline starts and ends. There's also there have also been efforts to restore 2 important wetlands, which have streams, which provide have outlets or inlets rather to the lake. I think these are 2 wetlands in Mityana. There's one called Nakatongoli, and then there's another one called I think it's called Mpamujugu. Yeah, they are wetland system. I think this lake has more than 5 inlets, sort of rivers or tributaries, which flow into it. But previously, this encroachment I cited had brought a problem of blocking these inlets, and so that contributed to the shrinkage or the shrinking of the lake. So what the government is doing through the district authorities is to sort of reclaim some of these wetlands so that the inlets can continue bringing the water as these other enforcement mechanisms continue. I think that's all I can say. Maybe I'll be able to answer questions a little later in case they are there. I can stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ronald. Your story was very interesting to read, that this is a lake that is guarded by the spirits, as the locals believe. So at this point, allow me to let Anika share the screen so we can get to understand more about Lake Wamala. Anika, please share your screen.
Ennyanja eno embeera yaayo etuuse ekiseera n'ekalira, etuuse ekiseera n'ejja. Kati emabegako mu myaka ng'ebiri amazzi gaadde gaatusalako ku nju wali nga gaatulya en'ettale. Kati olaba omusana gwaka gagenda gaddayo, ndowooza otambuddeko wali n'olaba. Awo wonna abali tewakyayitwa awo ng'amazzi gali mu nju ziri wali ezo gazisalako awo. Sayidi eri yonna nga gaasalawo wonna nga tusigadde okudduka okuvaawo wano kuba gaali gatumaze okutulya. Naye Mukama atuuse ekiseera n'azzaayo ate n'aleeta. Twawaayo okusaba kwaffe eri gavumenti basobole okutulekera amaato ago amatono, naye tuvuba obutimba obunene kubanga buli envuba gye twali tuvubamu kasita amateeka gaatukwasibwa twalagira abantu baffe ne basobola okugyamu envuba embi ne bateekamu emitego egyetaagisa. Era nakati gye ndiko wano gye munsanze ndiko nga nsiba. Ate kati ebyennyanja si bye bimu lwa nsonga. Kati tuvuba butimba bunene, luli twavubanga 2.3, kati tuli mu 4, tugenda mu 5. Waliwo enjawulo. Enjawulo ey'ebyennyanja okuba nga bikoze eki, nga bikuze. Obutimba 4, teka obugege sayizi y'inchi 2 buyita mu buyisi. Ndowooza ekitimba okiraba kyensiba. waliwo kulimbeko walira taata biri kitundu kali wakati wakatimba kano bwe kati ono nya kitundu wensiba ansi ebeeraga nti akwerikana ebyennyanja bye tukozesa kati bikulu okusinga ku bintu akozesa nga luli.
Batuteekako amateeka ne tukkiriza nti kituufu twonoona. Baatuyimiriza abakulembeze bagenda bayitako buli we basanze ekyo ebirime ng'ebyo nga babitema. Kati ekyo baatuyimiririza ddala tewali asobola kulimirako. Era ensiko ogiraba erudda n'erudda ng'ekutte.
Ekidde ekisamba ekyo, kisamba kyo ffe tukiyita kisamba kitusumbuwa. Ensonga lwaki olaba mu background yaffe tulinawo obwato obwato bwe tusobola okukozesa okukiyitamu. Kikusiba bamu bafiira nayo sofa.
Tulina bannabyabufuzi abaliwo batutegeeza ennyanja eno baagala gisiba mu mwezi ogw'omukaaga. Mu mwezi ogw'omukaaga tetusigala tusaba nti aba tulekere amaato gaffe ago olw'okuba ge gatujuna ku nsonga y'okuyita mu kisamba ekyo, kuba ekisamba ekyo twakyogerako ne bayiyaako n'okukijjako, naye ekisamba ekyo kyekikuuma ebyennyanja ebyo. Buli we kitula kati awo kitudde teryavubawo oyo sseŋŋenge ow'amaanyi ddala awatali ayitawo.
Thank you so much for that, Anika. In case you have any questions regarding Lake Wamala and the way Ronnie Musoke covered this story, you can put it on the chat box. We shall be able to attend to it later. Our next speaker is Janet Murikira from Kenya. So Janet is an environmental journalist. She's based in Kenya. She holds a master's degree in media and international development from the University of East Anglia in the United Kingdom. She has worked as an online editor for Baraka FM and has also been published by Monga Bay, German press agency, and The Independent in UK. So Janet, the floor is yours. Tell us more about Lake Jipe.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure being able to speak in such an important forum to speak about the degraded lakes of the Nile Basin. I think someone should share. I think Anika has my presentation. I sent my presentation, or should I share my screen? Because my presentation is in form of a PowerPoint.
Are you able to share it on your side?
Let me see if I can.
Okay.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, you can. Carry on.
Hold on a second. So the story I covered is on Lake Jipe, which is an interterritorial lake shared by Kenya and Tanzania in Taita Taveta County and Kilimanjaro region of Tanzania. So I did the story back in 2020 at the height of the COVID pandemic, when there were lockdowns and there was some sort of like countries had closed borders. I remember there was at some point where the border between Kenya and Tanzania was closed. So in an effort to curb the spread of cross-border infections. So it was quite a challenge back then, but looking back at what I did, I think I'm quite happy because it was such a challenge, but I managed to put it through. So my inspiration, before I start my presentation, my inspiration behind doing the story was, as an environment journalist, I had noticed that in as much as we cover stories on the environment and extinction of species, I had noticed that I had not covered a story that brings together like in the process of conserving the environment, how our communities impacted. Because we might talk like we might talk about the extinction of a species like the Jipe tilapia and the efforts being put to ensure that the Jipe tilapia does not become extinct, or the efforts being put to ensure that fishing communities still have a livelihood. But how does the conservation efforts affect communities and livelihoods? Because I'm not an expert in conservation, but I do believe that if we do not put communities at the heart of conservation efforts, then I mean, I don't know, because communities should be put as champions for the environment. So without further ado, I'll go to my story. The story is about what's driving the Jipe tilapia. Sorry, there's some sort of a typo. What's driving the Jipe tilapia into extinction? So this is a photo of Lake Jipe, which I took when I went to cover the story on the lake. This photo was taken on a fisherman's canoe on the Kenyan side. And at the background, you can see the Pare Mountains in Tanzania. So like I mentioned when I started, this is a lake that's shared by both Kenya and Tanzania, but the bigger part is in Tanzania. But what happens is that we have communities fishing on both sides, but because the demand for fish is higher on the Kenyan side, we have instances where fishermen from the Tanzanian side land and sell their fish on the Kenyan side because the demand is much higher on the Kenyan side. So some few facts about Lake Jipe. Like I said, it's a shallow interterritorial lake shared by Kenya and Tanzania in Taveta and the Kilimanjaro regions. It's fed by the Lumi River through the Kenyan side, and it outflows through the Ruvu River, which flows to the Nyumba ya Mungu Dam in Tanzania. So the Lumi River is one of the inflows, but we have other inflows like we have some inflows that come from nearby Lake Chala. Yeah, it's the only lake in the world where we can get the Oricomis jipe or the Jipe tilapia. And the Jipe tilapia has been listed as critically endangered by the International Union of Conservation of Nature since since 2006. Apologies for the typo. So when a fish is listed as, or when a species is listed as critically endangered, this means that there is a high chance that in the next, let's say 20 years or so, the species is going to become extinct in the wild. So you cannot find it, just like what happened to, I'm sure most of us have heard about dinosaurs, but we've never seen a dinosaur. So that's some fact about the lake. And about the Jipe tilapia extinction, it was listed as critically endangered by the internet, like I said, back in 2006. And based on my reporting, from what I found out is that invasive species have been cited as one of the causes contributing to the near extinction of the Jipe tilapia. This is based on research papers I read that had been done by universities, and also some quotes I got from some of the researchers I spoke who have worked on conservation projects in the lake. And I would like to mention some of the researchers I spoke. One of them is Dr. Gresham Mushana, who works with the Sokoine, who is a researcher with the Sokoine University of Agriculture in Tanzania. And also we have Dr. Paul Orina, I think, who is going to be presenting later, who works with the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute. So some of the invasive species in the lake we have seen are the Singida tilapia and the Nile tilapia. And in the case of the Singida tilapia, it's thought like it swimmed upwards through the lake from the Singida River and through one of the outflows. And the Nile tilapia, it was introduced both intentionally and intentionally based on some of the sources I interviewed for the story. unintentionally was when some of the Tanzanian fish farmers were doing a pilot project on the Nile tilapia, but it was a caged pilot project in the lake. But some of the cages disappeared in the lake, and after some few years, they started spotting the Nile tilapia in the lake. And intentionally was when Kenyan authorities from the Kenyan side in Taveta region introduced they noticed that due to the shortage of the Jipe tilapia, the livelihoods of the fishermen are threatened in the lake. So they introduced some Nile tilapia in the lake so as to so as to save the livelihoods of the fishing communities living around the Jipe area, or the fishermen who depend on the lake. So, sorry.
Excuse me, Janet.
Sorry.
You have about 1.5 minutes to go. In the meantime, there's a concern that you should reduce the size of your screen. I don't know whether this applies to everyone.
I don't know how. Oh God.
No, maybe you can just proceed.
Okay.
Just
Sorry.
proceed, about a minute to go.
Sorry, guys, I was just presenting. Yeah, so another thing, based on the story I did my story in September 2020, and I had been reporting on the story for the past 3 months, is that between the months of April, May, and June 2020, 15.7 tons of fish were caught in the lake, but Jipe tilapia made only 5% of the lake catches. The photo you can see below is of fishermen I took.
I just don't understand.
Sorry?
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, the fishermen, the photo I took is of the fishermen. You can see their catches are in form of juvenile catches. And one of the reasons why they're in form of juvenile catches is because some of the fishermen were using some nets that have been sort of banned by the government. But when you speak to the fishermen, most of them tell you like, that's the catches we can get. If we use the prescribed nets, we cannot catch any catches because we do not have any, like the fish that can be caught in big size, they are not in abundance in the lake. So another, like, I'll move quite fast because I have another threat facing the lake based on my reporting was unsustainable farming and irrigation methods, which had blocked the Lumi River, which is the main lake inflow, and heavy siltation in the lake that had caused the lake to reduce from approximately 100 kilometers squared to 30 kilometers squared. And one of the major challenges that's facing the lake is that Kenya and Tanzania, which are both sovereign states, they do not have a joint conservation framework on how they can cooperate together to implement conservation strategies on the lake. And another challenge was the southern cattle wheel, or the Typhodomogenes, which is the one you can see in the photo, which the IUCN estimated that it had covered around 60% of the lake. Sorry, guys, someone has. Yeah, so sorry, guys, I'm facing some challenges on my presentation. I think I should look at it from, yeah, so, yeah, and yeah, so some of the progresses that have been made since I covered the story is that the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute and the Taita Taveta County government deployed a unit to patrol the lake to curb the use of outlawed fishing nets. And the Taita Taveta County government officials started unblocking unblocked canals that were blocking River Rumi's inflow to Lake Jipe. And yeah, so in case you want to read the story, it appears both on Baraka FM and the InfoNile website, and it was also reprinted by, I think, a Tanzanian news site, I can't remember. Yeah, so if you want to read the story, this is a screen grab to the story, and this is a link to the story. Yeah, and I think I'll be open to take any questions in regards to the story. once we come towards the end of the session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Janet. There was a question on if it's the tilapia fish or the lake that is becoming extinct. To answer your question is the tilapia fish, but we shall attend to that later. Allow me to go next to Fred Mwasa. Fred Mwasa is a journalist based in Rwanda. Just a minute. Okay. Fred Mwasa is a journalist based in Rwanda. Until recently, he was an editor with the Chronicles, and he has had his journalism career for over 15 years. He has been conducting general investigative reporting, and most recently with Infonel support, he has found a niche in environment and conservation reporting. So in this project, Shrinking Lakes, Fred Mwasa covered the story Rwanda, the fishless country. Fred, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen.
Are you ready, Fred?
Anyhow, I'm having sharing my screen, but let me just proceed by just reading from my presentation here. Now, my story was on the issue of fish in Rwanda. For many years, fish is expensive in Rwanda, yet we have very many lakes. We're a small country, but we have about more than 100 lakes. The question has been, why is fish expensive? So with support from Infonel, I went looking for the reasons, and it was surprising, to say the least, because the story was very complex with lots of aspects to it. First, there was no information to work with. There was basically no information. The information that was available was largely in French, because, like you know, Rwanda is formerly a French-speaking country. The researchers in Rwanda were not willing to speak because of the politics in the country. Then the story kind of was difficult for us to do. I have a partner with whom I work the story on, and then we stopped working on the story for a few months as we're trying to find out exactly what is wrong with our story, because it was not getting the direction that we needed. Then during our research, we landed on Dr. Veverika. She's in the she's here today, and you'll be hearing from her today. In the mix of all that, COVID struck. So we spent about a year and a half working on the story because of different factors. But then finally the story was out with very good visualizations. I'm not going to go into the story. You can go to the Infonel site, or you come to the Chronicle site in Rwanda. The story is there and you can read it from there. It's a very interesting story. It explains as to why Rwanda has so many lakes, but then has very little fish. One of the factors, just to give a hint of the story, as to why there's very little fish in Rwanda, is the lakes are facing, or rather are being impacted by climate change. That's one. The other is the issue of how the lakes were formed. So it's a very complex science, but made very easily understandable when you go to the story, thanks to the visualizations that we worked on with Infonel. So the story is on the site. You can go and read. I'm sure you'll enjoy the story. Now, moving on, since the story came out last year, around June, several things have happened, but two major ones that I can point out. One is recently, this past May, the government announced that it's going to do a comprehensive study to understand what is wrong with the lakes and how best they can be exploited, rather how fish can be got from there using other ways. And that's an issue that was raised by Dr. Veverika in the story, because she pointed out that for any action to be taken on the lakes, there has to be a comprehensive study to understand what is really wrong with the lakes, and then something can work out along those lines. The other element which I announced with a lot of sadness is, I don't know if that's because of the story, but the regions are around Lake Kivu, which is the largest lake where the fish comes from. There's a lot of unemployment because the government is implementing the measures to control nets and illegal fishing. So a lot of people became unemployed because they don't have any work. In September last year, I went to Karongi. It's an area next to Lake Kivu. I went to visit a friend, and the friend told me there's a lot of theft in the region because there are a lot of unemployed people because they no longer work on the lake. So looking back, it's an interesting story, but that had a rather a negative consequence that I didn't expect. Hopefully, something can be worked out. In brief, that's all I can say. The story is on the sites. You go and read it. You'll love it. It's long, but you'll not get tired of reading it. I hope I've given a brief idea of what the story is like. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Fred. That was nice to hear. Very insightful and impactful to all of us. The next story we are going to touch on is restoration of Lake Nakivale by Kajumba Godfrey. Is Kajumba here with us? So Kajumba works with Uganda, a leading multimedia house with Vision, that is Vision Group, as a news producer. He has been an electronic media journalist for about 20 years. He has risen through the ranks from a junior reporter to a news producer. He has also developed a soft spot for environment and health related issues. But before we go through Kajumba's presentation, allow us to kindly share a short video about this story.
Located in Isinjiro district, Lake Nakivale serves both the refugees in Nakivale refugee camp and Ugandan nationals in the area next to the lake.
Isinjiro district is a district with a big water body called Nakivale Lake.
The lake has been under threat due to massive pollution due to silting following massive deforestation during the setup of the camp.
The coming of refugees, especially in 1994, the other war in Rwanda, which brought many people now, they ended up cleaning and killing the environment.
Acting Constance, an environment assistant officer in Nakivale refugee camp, attributes the increased encroachment on the wetlands around Lake Nakivale to increased population and loss of soil fertility in most parts of the camp.
Due to high population rate, wetlands have been encroached, and because the soils here in the camp, in the settlement, have lost the fertility, people have resorted to cultivating around the lake.
Cultivation up to the lake shores, excess and illegal fishing by both the refugees and nationals just made the situation worse. Now, the refugees in Nakivale refugee camp in Isinjiro district have taken the lead role in the conservation and protection of the lake, the biggest water source to the camp and the surrounding areas.
Babiri ni balima no mu mizi, babiri ni balima mu bitakure, enyanya n'ebindi. Konke twasharamo ngo kugira ngo tulime higuru kugira ngo turebe ngo abantu ntitwaguma guhinga mu mizi, rera mizi ngo gumagenda. Nkahati wahikayo hariya harubaju ya mizi. Hariho imita nkankaga ziyongireho za mizi kandi ho nababiri nibahahinga konka hati turi kugamba niba wahikayo hari ha mizi
amizi akaba yagenda hari konka hati inyanja yatandika kunani kwiyongeramo habwokuba nti turi kugihinga aha rubaju na munonga ekintu kirungi obwire bwe tukaba nituhinga imboga hariya hihi n'inyanja zikagira ubugwire bwinshi habwokubera enanka ebifunzo n'ibiki byona konka hati obwire ni buke bukacendera.
Akiteng Constance, the Environment Assistant Officer, accuses local politicians of frustrating the efforts to conserve this beautiful lake.
Where nationals have settled, there is a lot of encroachment, and when we are implementing this activity of wetland restoration, there is resistance from the politicians.
I want to appreciate the refugees who have complied. They are doing activities away from the lake 200 meters, and some trees have been planted.
Despite the efforts by implementing partners to support the refugees save Lake Nakivale, environmentalists say this isn't enough to save the lake.
The schedules of the National Environment Act, it has a recognition of a 200-meter buffer zone from the lowest water mark. We had earmarked 200 meters along the lake shores of Lake Nakivale. Even we had to make sure that the first part of the buffer zone, we promote their tree planting. We allowed the locals to come and do seasonal cropping under the trees so that the trees can mature. And then we get a buffer zone of well-vegetated area. But it is very unfortunate that for the refugee side, people recognized the buffer zone. Then the area which is under the jurisdiction of the nationals, they are misbehaving.
Well, okay. I hope you've all understood the content of that story, but briefly, maybe Godfrey, you can just give us insights that were maybe not captured in the video itself, your insights and experiences in the shortest time possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hope I'm loud and clear. Maybe just like most of my colleagues earlier said, we are affected by the COVID outbreak, so the story had to take longer than had earlier planned. But maybe even being a story connected to the refugees, going to the refugee camp, there's a lot of bureaucracy from the office of the Prime Minister where the refugees fall. So we needed clearance, which also took some time until we got it. But maybe just like the story says, Nakivale is a water body in southwestern Uganda. It's a very big source of water for both the refugees and the locals around the refugee camp. So coming up with the story, it was maybe there have been several conflicts between the nationals and the refugees, made me especially about resource sharing over the lake. That goes to both fishing and maybe tree planting and that kind of stuff. So the story looked at what came into my mind when I was given a grant was that actually the refugees had started on a campaign to try to restore their part under their jurisdiction. That's a part of the lake within the refugee camp. And maybe just as you've seen, they are doing a lot of things, including tree planting and also doing some gardening, mainly doing vegetables. Those are onions, beans, and I think some Irish potatoes, which things they think are going to help them for financial income. Maybe that's the good thing. In Uganda, refugees are given the liberty to engage in some economic activities, provided it's mainly within or around the around the settlements. So mainly the encroachment, not mainly the encroachment on the lake, I can't call it the encroachment, maybe the collapse or the drying up of the lake was mainly due to human activities, which includes maybe as a result of the overpopulation. If you look at the environment, the settlement itself, it has a population of around 134 refugees. And these are from different countries, including Rwanda, DRC, Somalia, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Eritrea. So by the end of the story, what we ran by that time, that's around a year and over a year ago, the project had taken off and the refugees were planning to plant 100,000 trees in a distance of 500 meters around the lake. And they had, I think, around 500 kilometers to cover. But like I earlier said at the beginning, when I was told to make a presentation, I tried to get in touch with the organization that is doing the implementation, that is in Samizi, but again, they were a bit cagey because they were asking for clearance. You have to go back to the OPM, and the time I was given wasn't enough for me to get clearance from the OPM to come and make my presentation, because at times it takes like 2-3 weeks, which at time I never really got. Although I got some little information from some of the people within Samizi saying that they have continued to plant trees around the lake. So the project is still going on. Their efforts are still on, and they're telling me that every rainy season, like we are currently experiencing, they are doing what? They do take part in a tree planting, in fact, massive tree planting. However, I had an opportunity to talk to the current district chairman, that's Aaron Torahi, and he said, as a district, in areas outside the refugee settlement, they have also started planting trees. In fact, as the meeting was on, they called me. They are trying to invite people who had registered for tree planting to go and receive the tree seedlings. This tree planting outside the refugee settlement is a private investment. So any person, any Ugandan can go pick trees, then he's allocated the land. If you don't own the land, you ask for land, you allocated the land around the lake, maybe like Jaconius Mosengwere said, what the environment officer within the video, then you're given trees and then you do what? You plant, and even the harvesting is yours. The proceeds from the trees later, maybe after 10-15 years, is yours. So according to the single district chairman, they are engaging people to plant trees, and on top of that, they are also mobilizing people. He says so far they have been successful, telling people to get off the showers, and people are willingly getting off the shores of Lake Nachivale and engaging in activities that help into the conservation of the lake. On the increased fishing on the lake, according to the chairperson, they have put up laws. Much as to him, he says they get a lot of revenue from the fishermen. They can't totally stop them from fishing, but they're actually regulating fishing, especially through getting rid of the illegal fishing nets that were aiding farmers to get fish that are not yet immature fish. So now they are putting up laws through the beach management committees so that the fishermen can use the right fishing gear. I was told to find out, well, that's the latest or what's coming up, what's being done. And maybe according to the communication I got, someone was asking what lessons can be drawn from the story by the journalists. One, I think we need to be patient as we cover some of the stories. There might not be as easy to get, it might not be easy to get information as like, especially if you're going to be doing an environment and moreover an investigative story. Just like we all earlier said, due to COVID, and we had a lot of issues with COVID over a long period of time, but if with time we manage to get what we want. And again, access to information by some of us or some media houses might not be easy. At times there's a lot of bureaucracy. So again, we need to train carefully and avoid getting on the wrong side of the law as we do our stories. Then to the countries, authorities, and the communities, I believe, if you look at this story, the refugees coming up with the idea, we can say they are vulnerable people. These are people away from their countries, not sure of what tomorrow will bring, but they have been able to be productive. So I believe to our governments, to our authorities and the communities, vulnerability shouldn't take away our potential. And maybe with the governments, we need to support our communities that we think are vulnerable, because these people have taken up the responsibility of helping restoring the lake, and not only restoring, but in the long run, they also get some money from the what? From the fruits and vegetables they get from their gardens. So I believe being vulnerable shouldn't keep us away from being productive. Maybe that's all I have, unless I'll get some questions later during the course of the presentations. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Kajumba. It was really nice to see that refugees, a minority in a community, can come a long way in changing the world and the environment today. Our next presentation is from Megan Lee. Megan Lee is a journalist based in the US. She's a freelance journalist, filmmaker, and photographer. She focuses on the environment, development, and art. She has worked with Infonile on a couple of stories, Floppy Though, Uganda's first oil, and then one that is featured on this story is the climate change threatens Lake Nakuru. Over to you, Megan. Hello, Megan. I can see you. Yes, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. So I'll be presenting on my story about Lake Nakuru. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I got a question list of what I should address. I first wanted to start with the process of this story. It kind of, unlike the others, it was very spontaneous. I was just traveling in Kenya, and I was hearing from various people that I talked to that there was unprecedented flooding of Lake Nakuru. And I happened to be nearby, and I contacted Annika and Fred to see if they would fund me to do this story. And luckily they accepted. So I made my way out there and had to organize with a few locals, notably James Waikibia, who is shown here. He's an activist, a very prominent environmental activist in Kenya. And so I wanted to start with the fact that this story wouldn't have been possible without multiple people, because as a foreigner, you don't really know anything that's going on. So I was kind of relying on Annika and Fred, and James Wakiba. He connected me with the driver who was able to take us around to do investigations. Yeah. So what struck me when we got to Lake Nakuru was this kind of very apocalyptic feeling where just all these buildings are that people used to live in are just empty, abandoned structures. And all the trees that obviously used to be part of the forest are now sitting in water. This was the boat that took us around, and again, I wouldn't have been able to look around the lake without being able to be taken around by these locals. And one of the interesting byproducts of the flooding is that there's actually more fishing now. So locals are illegally going into the lake and collecting fish. The issue with that is with the flooded lake, a lot of pollution is getting into the lake from surrounding urban areas. And that's causing the fish to have a lot of heavy metals and things that you wouldn't want to eat. But since the locals, their occupation used to be with farming, and they're not able to farm because all their land is flooded, they're just resorting to catching fish. So here are just more images I took that sort of captured the haunting scene. Another issue is with the flamingos. So since the lake has become flooded, and these lakes are alkaline, meaning they have a higher salt content, which helps produce the algae that these flamingos feed on, and that normally give them their pink color. But with the flooding and the dilution of the lake, the flamingos are not able to get the proper nutrients they need, and they're seen a little bit whiter here. And there used to be millions of flamingos. Now they're going to other nearby alkaline lakes to get the nutrients they need. And this is just an example of the urban pollution runoff. This is an interesting story. When we were leaving the lake, I stopped to take one last picture, and then one of the baboons just jumped into the car. And there were a few other people in the car, and they really got freaked out. So they closed the door. So the monkey actually was inside the car for like a good few seconds. And but luckily everyone turned out fine. So we just drove around the lake to get different angles. I felt that was important. So this is in response to the question that was asked about what steps are currently being taken to avert biodiversity loss. The issue with Lake Nakuru is the biodiversity is due to the flooding, which is due to climate change, which is a huge issue, and it's hard to be addressed locally. But there are small things that can be done locally, such as sensitizing locals and making small actions, but really there just needs to be more studies to convince the government to implement more restrictions on businesses and just addressing climate change in general. This was in response to my experience working as a foreign environmental journalist. I don't have experience working as a journalist anywhere else, so I don't really have a norm to compare to, but in Uganda, it seemed I was allowed to be anything because I look Chinese. So for example, in this Bugoma story that I did, they thought that we were land grabbers, maybe because they saw that I was Chinese. And so they kind of cornered us, and they stood all around us with machetes, and they were not going to let us go. But luckily I was with a local journalist who knew a radio journalist, and he knew the locals and was able to explain the situation. But even then, this lady who's sitting in the truck, she is part of the sugarcane company that we were reporting against, and she notified the police or had some connection with the police. And so even after the locals let us through, the police were after us, and it was a narrow escape. And it kind of showed me that as a foreigner, like, I have a lot of power that could be abused, and I had to be aware of that, because I was bringing the people around me into dangerous situations that maybe if I was caught, I could escape. Maybe the US Embassy would come in or something, but others, maybe activists, their lives would be at stake. So being a foreigner is a very sensitive thing. And I also, the fact that I felt like I didn't know anything, everything was very new, and I had to rely on locals to sort of execute all of these stories successfully. And I guess the fact that I'm open to whatever comes, and I wasn't scared, that's kind of what allowed me to be in this space.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Megan. It's so sad to know that you had to go through all those challenges, but that is what this career comes with. We are running short of time. I would maybe take in 2 questions from the panelists. Is there anyone with a question? Just to note, this story on Lake Nakuru, it was written by Nuru Sadun, and Megan Lee did the video. Yeah. So is there anyone with a question, maybe, to the journalists before we cross over to the scientists? No one has a question? Okay, so I'll probably pose this question to Fred Mwasa from Rwanda. You used a variety of visualizations in your story. In your opinion, do you think these visualizations had an impact? Did they make your story helpful? Did it improve the quality and the readability of your story? How do you think these visualizations helped?
Okay, thank you for that. Now, at the beginning of the story, we didn't have information. By the end of the story, we had so much information that if we had not put it into visualization form, I'm not so sure I would be able to write a 5,000 word story. You could probably write a 100,000 word story. So the visualizations made it very easy to bring out a lot of content in a very small format. That's one element. 2, the visualizations allowed to put together information that was never in the public domain. Nearly the data that you see in the story, the numbers, everything, much of that information is new information that was generated by us through the story. So the visualizations basically have made a very complex story easy to read. So looking back, I'm not so sure this would have been a story without visuals. Never, I don't think so.
You did a good job, Fred. Thank you so much for that. Someone had asked on the number of people living around Lake Omala. Ronald has answered in the question tag. There are about 1,000 people, but we don't have the exact number of people unless a survey is done on that. I'll quickly run through to the scientist section. These scientists featured in the story, in the different stories. We are not able to feature to have all the journalists all the scientists on board. in the interest of time, but I'll quickly have Dr. Paul take the stage. Dr. Paul is a zoology in BSc, MSc, and PhD holder from the University of Africa, East Africa Baraton, Moi University, and the University of Eldoret based in Kenya. His specialty is in fish breeding and genetics, coupled with optical culture system, particularly in aquaculture and conservation of endangered freshwater indigenous species. He has experience in fisheries and aquaculture, having spent at least 13 years in lakes Victoria, Turkana, and Naivasha. He has about 10 years part-time teaching and supervising experience in various international and local universities. He's also a member of the World Aquaculture Society. He doubles as the Assistant Director Freshwater Aquaculture, seeing all freshwater in KEMFRI, that is Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute, and also the Center Director for KEMFRI in Kigati, Kisii, and Aquaculture Center under the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute. So I know I'm not able to exhaust your bio, Dr. Paul, because you've done so much research far and wide, but allow me to let you take the stage. Take it all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Steve. I will quickly utilize the time that is there available for all of us. Are you able to see my presentation?
Yes, you can see it.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll rush through these status of East African lake ecology and biodiversity. Of course, looking at the challenges, opportunities, and threats to their conservation. Probably I'll take the approach of the challenges or threats and then wind up with the opportunities. Because at the end of the day, you really want to tell people what is good at the end of the day. East African lakes and their resources basically play a very key role in the economies of East Africa, the socio-economic status of the East African people, looking at a population of about 8 million directly benefiting from this, and the economic base of about $1,000 million annually. But this has been declining. And the lakes are depending heavily on the inflows of the rivers from the upper catchment areas. And this has been a major aspect that has affected the endemic species, their diversity and distribution, depending on the flow of the rivers. I was just talking to my son who is currently in Masai Mara, one of the game reserves, one of the largest game reserves in Kenya. And I was asking him, how is River Mara looking like? And he told me River Mara is very low. It's one of the biggest rivers feeding into Lake Victoria. And of course, many aspects are taking, many activities are taking place in our water bodies. And with a specific focus on Lake Victoria, we are seeing, of course, the fishing activities going down, the introduction of alien species, including the water hyacinth that we are seeing on this end. It's been a major menace in Lake Victoria and has affected both navigation and the species distribution, abundance, and diversity, a big issue. And ultimately, we have seen this issue resulting in the upcoming of the cages in Lake Victoria, both Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. But not limited to only Lake Victoria, we're also seeing other small water bodies, smaller lakes, also experiencing issues to do with cage fish farming. There are pros and cons to that, but all that has been necessitated by the pressure to have fish on the table. Of course, as I've said, there's slowed fishing. We have cases of, many boats along the Lake Victoria basin, the East African region. Most water bodies, fishermen now having their boats parked out there. They go in for fishing and they come back with a paltry, pieces of fish, which make no economic sense. And all these factors as a result of the declining fish populations in the lake, the diversity of the species has also gone down. But I want again another case in point. I know Murikira mentioned on this about Lake Jipe. I was at Lake Jipe today since yesterday. And some of these images are most recent images from Lake Jipe. You can see the turbidity level of this lake. The lake looks more like disturbed water, and the vegetation that you see around, a lot has changed in this lake and many other East African lakes. The lakes are shrinking very fast. And when they're increasing within a very short time, and again, you see another shrinking. It's more of a cyclic event that we are seeing in the East African lakes. Lake Baringo is another case in point, and Kijane Barola in Uganda. So some of the other lakes that we are seeing in East Africa. You can see the Ugandan lake here, a lot of agricultural activity now taking place along the fringes, an indicator that actually much of the lake has shrunk in, and so people have reverted to doing a lot of agriculture around, as the earlier presenter indicated, without respecting the possibility of the cyclic rise of the lake at some point, which we are going to see later on the effects, and some have been presented about Lake Nakuru and many other lakes. You can see Lake Baringo on this side for Kenya, and the vegetation, as you may see the trees here, that is the rise and the decline of the lake level, creating those cyclic events that are affecting the fisheries. In the essence, when this rise and decline happens, it disturbs the breeding grounds. And in essence, that means the fish are not able to breed and the populations are not able to be replenished. These are small water bodies, the dams, which we cannot forget. They play a key role in the economics of the people, the socioeconomic status of people around East Africa, East and Central Africa. And as you can see, this is my team with the vehicles around trying to monitor the levels of the small water bodies, the dams and all that. And you can see the shrinking. All this area where the vehicles are occupied and human people are moving, all this area was initially occupied, but it shrunk because of less waters. What are some of the challenges associated with this? We have issues to do with climate change, which has been mentioned earlier. Serious challenge, issues to do with carbon emission, and also issues to do with growing populations. We're going to see some of the maps, the JS maps, showing more activity and more vegetation reduction, increased demand for protein. Of course, more fishing is going on, intense. Look at Lake Jipe, the images that were shown earlier, and I'm going to show the ones I got today. Very small fish being fished out, and people are claiming that our families are going to sleep hungry, so they have no other ways but to use illegal nets. Unregulated agricultural practices along the shores of these lakes has contributed heavily to siltation, and also water chemistry change, and that has affected the fisheries along these water bodies. Increased demand for firewood, of course, and wood, and for various activities, for construction of the traditional houses, for firewood and all that, has also left the land bare, as we're going to see some of these images. Introduction of alien species, this was talked about in Lake Jipe. It's a serious case. I've actually been researching on Lake Tilapia Jipe, and I tried hybridizing Tilapia Jipe with Tilapia niloticus and Tilapia singida, and they're able to give you viable offspring. So where is the future for the genetic material of this endemic species? There's also the issue of political interference is a major concern in all water bodies in East Africa, something that must be addressed. The issue of our people not having food on the table and environmental conservation, those are two different things that need to be separated and make sure that we are actually living to the realities of the future as far as sustainability is concerned. And coordinated interventions, yes, we have too many bodies, government and NGOs running around, claiming to have interventions, but they are all not coordinated. And you see all these bodies running around and they're not able to actually synergize their efforts. Now, this map shows what is happening around Kisumu. That is the largest city around the Lake Victoria, Kenya side. And you can see there's less green around this Kisumu area, meaning there's a lot of human settlement. And this is exposing a lot of waste coming into the lake. And inside the lake, see the algal bloom, the green stuff, that is an indicator of the pollution levels. Again, to the other towns, you talk of Mwanza, talk of Jinja, and you can see the vegetation cover here is less dense. You come to this area, the vegetation is less dense, and into the water, you see a lot of algal bloom. Deep into the water, the lake again, there's no clarity of this water. What you are seeing is actually high levels of turbidity affecting the species diversity and distribution. Disjointed BME operations, the beach management units, the community-based management efforts that were initiated along the Lake Victoria region and many other lakes within the East Africa is an approach that is utilized by all the lakes. Unfortunately, these BMUs have failed in ensuring that actually the right fishing gears are used, the landing is at one point, the breeding grounds are protected. This is what was anticipated they were supposed to do, but it looks like they turned out to be negative cartels, unfortunately. A case in point again, Lake Jipe, where I was some time back with my CEO from Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute, Professor Njiru, and the gentleman at the center was the Minister for Agriculture in Taita Taveta County in Kenya. And we found, poor fishing gears, illegal fishing gears being used by the fishermen, and they were not running away. They received us. This is the Minister for Agriculture in the county. And, you have the Director of Fisheries, the lady next to my CEO, and they received us. And, they said, this is what we use. We have no alternative. We must feed our families. Regulate, the regulatory frameworks and the policies that are put in place are people informed. Issues of climate change, as I talked earlier, this is Lake Baringo. The hotel has simply been submerged by the rising lake levels. And the risk of people losing their lives, the crocodiles are everywhere. Like Baringo is infested with crocodiles. The risk, even in the Ugandan side, the floodings are a great threat to human life, and also the breeding grounds of fish. Aquaculture has come in as I wind up, and the activities of aquaculture are also affected with the issues of the lakes in East Africa. The algal bloom, the eutrophication of the lakes, and the upwelling, the lifting up of the lakes. Some lakes are monomictic, they actually upwell once a year. Others are dimictic, they do it twice a year. Others could be polymictic. But a case in point of Lake Victoria, where fish kills have been reported in cages, the poor positioning of the cages, not going into the deeper waters. And this is also causing conflict between the fishermen and the cage fish farmers, something that must be monitored closely. We have the issue of also escapees from the cages and interfering with actually the genetic material of the wild fish, which are not domesticated. The issue of the fish traders and the little omena or daga fish. Now we are finding the women struggling to have little fish on the market. And this has also exposed the women to what we call the Jaboya issue in Kenya, where women actually trade, they do sex trade for fish, that a woman will not get fish from the lake unless she offers herself for sex. And this has been a very serious issue that people have been hiding and not want to talk about it. And I think in Kenya, we have really tried to bring this out, even through research. That's something that needs to be stopped. And aquaculture is coming in actually to mitigate that, because now the women traders can go for the aquaculture fish, unlike the capture fish that is not available at all. Emerging issues also like diseases. Yes, we are seeing more infected fish that is really required in East Africa for consumption. You can see the leeches all over this catfish and also the tilapia. These are issues that need to be addressed. And also the infections that are likely to pass over from the fish to humans and all that. More reported cases of infections, the cyanotoxin levels in the lake. With increased algal blooms, there are certain algal bodies in the water that with increased temperature emit toxins. And so this is what we call cyanotoxins. Look at this lady who is washing her utensils in the lake and probably collecting this water for domestic use. This little girl who has come from school is coming to the lake to collect water to take home. Look at the quality of the water. The probability that we are going to have more reported cancer cases is very high along our water bodies as a result of the various activities, including this herding activity that we've seen from time to time in various water bodies. Look at the turbidity levels. Will not allow even breeding of the fish. The water quality is disturbed. The breeding grounds are disturbed. And this was a case study of today's visit to Lake Jipe. I was there this morning. And look at the number of herds traveling from the homestead down to the lake, and the loosening of the soil. And all this is pouring into Lake Jipe. And what is happening is the lake levels of Lake Jipe are worsening because the siltation is all pouring into the lake. And when the heavy rains come, the flooding comes to the community very fast because of the shallowness of the lake. The vegetation around this area has all been destroyed because of the animals, the increased number of herds that the communities have that is not regulated. Serious issues. Now, this is another caption that I got today from Lake Jipe. Look at the small tilapias. less than 50 grams. And that's what the traders are working on. And much of this, as earlier said, was coming from the Tanzanian side because the Kenyan side is extremely shallow, less than 2 meters deep, a lake that is less than 2 meters deep. The deepest parts are mostly in Tanzania. And that's where most of the fish is coming from Tanzania. Of course, the cooking approach using the firewood, the vegetation around the lake is also exposing the land to the soil to erosion. Opportunities as I wind up. Sorry for taking much time. We are looking at the opportunity in terms of enhanced literacy among highland and lakeside communities. Avenues on key biodiversity areas awareness creation have grown, of course, with the digital platform. I'm impressed with the kind of information that you've shared. I hope this will be shared on our email later on. That, the media is one of the strongest platforms in terms of sharing information. Learning institutions form a rich biodiversity conservation awareness ground from the cradle school, the little ones in school, to the universities is very important. Frameworks and policies, they are beautiful ones, very well crafted for East Africa, but the implementation bit, the enhancement is very weak. Also, the local management networks to promote innovative projects through the university funds and all that, and international grants could probably enhance conservation efforts. And finally, they need to appreciate and exploit indigenous knowledge and how this can enhance the efforts in terms of conservation of the East African lakes. Overall, climate change is having great effects on the East African lakes. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Paul. Maybe before we go to Dr. Viverika, there's a question someone is asking. Does the rise in water levels, is there an impact when the rise in water levels comes up every other time?
Is there an impact? Yes, there is an impact. Probably the positive one, people will have more catches of fish, probably because they are moving to the vegetated areas. But that is very short-lived. The other aspect would be the negative impact is, of course, the people who have settled at the fringes of the lake will have to be displaced. There will be infections in terms of diseases and many, many other negative effects. And this has already been felt in most of the East African lakes. The Lake Victoria Basin, the Lake Victoria Fisheries Authority organization, they put structures along the lake to support the fishermen in terms of landing. Those landing sites have been covered by water, so they have to struggle and find where they can land their fish. Those are existing challenges.
Okay, and do you think there is a specific approach to solutions journalism to these issues?
I would implore on you as journalists, because I have been very observant on issues to do with the environment in terms of your coverage. It's good to cover the truth in terms of what is happening. I know once you cover a story, somebody will be hired probably to cover a story and give it the positive side of it. I would rather we cover the negative side of the story as it is, so that we are actually able to push the policy makers and implementers to actually do the right thing. If there is, pollution into the lake from the factories, from the industries around these water bodies, bring it out as it is. It's good to be courageous and bring it out as it is. It will help a lot in terms of conservation.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Paul. Our next speaker is Dr. Karen Viverika. Karen has over 40 years experience in aquaculture and production of fresh warm water fish. 20 of them of these years have been in Africa. She has led USAID funded projects in fish farming development and research capacity building in Rwanda, 10 years in Rwanda, 3.5 years in Kenya, and 3.5 years in Uganda. She has worked short-term in 10 countries in West and Central Africa, 6 countries in South Africa, and 6 countries in East Africa, and 3 in Asia. Karen has recently retired from her job from Urban University as a director of one of the world's largest fisheries and aquaculture university-owned research stations in the world, but she continues to design and assist with training programs from participants all over the world. She has also done research consultancies between 2012 and 2015, of which these have been for the Food and Agricultural Organization, World Bank in Uganda, Togo, Benin, and the American Soybean Association. Karen loves to say her very favorite statement is that much as she has gone to school in the US, she has been educated in Africa. Over to you, Karen.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm
Yes,
speaking from, okay, I'm speaking from Cambodia tonight.
Very late. It must be very late there. We really appreciate the sacrifice you have made to join us. Thank you so much.
It's quite late. Okay,
Yeah.
so I don't have a presentation. I'm just here to answer questions, but Dr. Arena really covered all the things that need to be talked about. So I'm really just here to answer questions. As if people are writing their questions, one thing I could say is in my years of working in East Africa, I see the biggest problem is what we call the tragedy of the commons. Conservation is good, it's necessary, good, you know, following fishing regulations and managing the fisheries are desirable. But when you have poverty and lack of other opportunities for people, they end up overfishing, as Dr. Arena and others have pointed out. And it's becomes a very, very difficult problem to resolve. So yes, this is the challenge, and it's very nice. I think all of your journalists have made very good reports with a lot of sympathy for the situations in which people find themselves. So I'm quite impressed with everything.
Thank you so much, Karen. Maybe just a few questions before you go. There's insufficient fish production there's insufficient fish production in Rwanda, and this is largely attributed to its physiography and unfavorable climate and other man-made factors. What are some of the recommendations you can offer to Rwanda with regards to increasing its fish population? And how can journalists and the media in general help in contributing to this?
Well, I guess all I could say is, you know, you have to deal with the situation that was given by nature. It's very difficult to take a lake like Lake Kivu that has very steep shores, so you don't have a lot of capacity for natural production. So there's not a lot that you can do. Some of the aquaculture practices are fine to enhance the productivity or the production of fish. But remember, when you're doing aquaculture like that, especially in cages, you need to feed the fish. And what you make the feed out of is something, there are many of the same things that people eat already themselves. So it's quite a challenge. There's, you know, some fisheries management things that can be done to enhance the catches, get your maximum or optimum sustainable yield. And a lot of that has to do with implementing fishing regulations, which is very difficult when your population is poor. And there's a lot of new entries into the fishery. So even aquaculture from ponds, you don't have a lot of flat land to make the large fish farms that are found in other countries. Rwanda is faced with the challenge to become the best managers they possibly can, given the circumstances they have for aquaculture.
Oh, great. So this last question is directed to Dr. Paul. How are the community living in these areas around Lake Jipe? How are they adapting to the rising water levels? And are there new projects coming up to adapt to the new normal?
Well, I have already commented on that. It's been left to the people themselves to find a way of, meeting their challenges. I would say much of it is that they are left to themselves. People are moving to the higher grounds, but that is temporarily because they're just hoping that the lakes will recede, and once they recede, they'll go back and settle originally where they were. Unfortunately, there will be, the environment will lie to them for about 7, 10, 15 years, and the problem hits back again. Of course, there could be a few interventions from maybe the government, World Vision Kenya, and maybe Red Cross, but these are not sustainable interventions in terms of tents and food provision, basically to that level.
Okay, thank you so much. Susan, I can see you've raised your hand. Is there something you'd like to say?
Hello? Hello.
Susan, there's something you'd like to say? Your mic is muted. Susan, we can't get you. Maybe you should type your question in the chat box. We can't hear you.
Same, Anika is also, I don't know, Anika has been trying to seek for your attention.
My attention.
Hi, I think that's Ronald Musoke.
Susan has also raised her hand. Ronnie, you have something you need to say?
Sure, I have. Thank you so much. I have one general question which I would love the two scientists to help me with. Actually two. Maybe the first one would be for Karen. I was just wondering, from your wide range of experience, have you experienced anything like what the story of Rwanda? I mean, the issue of lack of fish in these lakes. Have you ever experienced anything like this elsewhere? The reason I'm asking this is I sort of think Rwanda has a very huge task, yeah, of bringing this the fisheries, given such structures of their lakes, though their lakes are structured anyway. I wonder whether that will be easy to solve in the coming years. And secondly, one question for both of you is the issue again. I think Karen talked about the tragedy of the commons. Yeah, when it comes to utilization of natural resources such as the lakes and rivers. This is going to give you a short, I think, solution. I think the government of Uganda has been trying to do, sort of to fix the issue of illegal fishing in Uganda's lakes. So they've gone ahead to deploy the military, yeah, and they are the ones now enforcing all sorts of regulations on these lakes. But I wonder whether it is sustainable, because now for a lake like Lake Victoria, which is shared by all the three countries, you find that in Uganda there's this enforcement going on, but on the Kenyan side and Tanzanian side, there's nothing of this sort going on, and quite often we see clashes among fishermen from these other countries. I wonder how that can be resolved. How best can this issue be resolved? Thank you.
Okay, I think the first question was about the any other places with few species, few fish, and what they're doing about it. Yeah, there are a lot of places that have conditions that give you low fish species numbers. So, low fish diversity. One of them is on the continent of North America, a good bit of Canada and the United States were swept by glaciers, and that really reduced the fish diversity. As you get to the south of the US where the glaciers did not go, we get increasing diversity. So Alabama and Tennessee have the highest diversity of fish species. We have lakes in, you know, different parts of the US where there are very few fish, like Crater Lake in Oregon, a very clear lake with steep sides, and it doesn't have high diversity. There's a lot of places in the world with low diversity and low fish populations. The problem is Rwanda is a small country. They don't have a lot of options of where to go, but in a place like the US or Canada, they go to another place where things are better, and that's where you get your fish from, or they have the coastal zone. So yes, that's another challenge for Rwanda. I don't know if Dr. Orino wants to say anything about enforcement, but yes, the ideal is to convince the population to understand the reason why you should not catch fish before they have matured and can reproduce. But the problem is that the fishermen say, oh yeah, I understand. I would like to stop, but I can't stop if everyone else is going to fish still. So they have to be sure that it's going to stop for everyone. And there are many examples, some even on the coast of Kenya, where fishermen and fishing communities are themselves managing the fisheries. But it's very difficult because people need alternatives for the time when they're not fishing. Over to you, Dr. Paul.
Thank you, Karen. I have personally benefited from Karen's work in Savannah. Savannah Fisheries is the largest government farm in Kenya. I sincerely appreciate the work that you did there. Now, to address the issue of how do we work together as East African community, of course, and ensure that you know we save the fish in Lake Victoria and all other activities associated with that water body. There is the East African community. We are all aware about this, and it was formed way back in November 30th, 1999 in Arusha. But you know, it's out of an East African Community Treaty, and it bore the Lake Victoria Basin Commission. Now, it's a high time we, you know, challenge through the media. We challenge these bodies to walk out of their boardrooms. We don't want these meetings. We are tired of having meetings. We want action on the ground. And an action not based on one country, as you provoked earlier, that Uganda is having its approach. It's working but not sustainable. An approach that will be an East African approach. It's a high time we cannot have an East African community with a Lake Victoria Basin Commission that is accruing salaries, that has officers to pay, and all these benefits that they're gaining out of a water body that is not actually seeing any meaningful change. So my recommendation is we walk out of the boardrooms with the various water bodies, the LBFO, Lake Victoria Fisheries Organization, the LBBC should rise up from the boardrooms and take a concerted effort among the 3 East African countries. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Paul. Maybe before we go, in the interest of time, in a word or two, maybe Dr. Paul, you can let us know why do we say that these lakes are receding, reducing in depth, they're shrinking, yet when it rains, it floods? What can you say in 1 or 2 sentences?
Well, see, this is purely an issue of climate change, but also our lakes are filling up too fast because of the images I showed earlier. Most of the lakes are filled with siltation, and so they've got very little room to absorb the floods that come in. So purely climate change and anthropogenic activities that have caused the siltation of the lakes. Most of the lakes have very little space to take in the water. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paul. We are winding the session, but before we go, it is important to note that these stories could not come to life if we did not have the input of the scientists like Dr. Paul and Veverika among the few that were selected. So to understand how this is possible, we launched a platform called NileWell in April this year. Andrew Aijuka is going to let us know how to get to link up with other journalists and scientists in the building up of our story so that we bring about stories that are both factual, science-based, and also that based on data and facts. So Andrew Ijuka, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Delicate. Hello, everyone. Happy to see you all and happy to have joined this wonderful conversation. So just like I've been told, I'm just going to take you through how, we can open up an account with NileWell. So NileWell is the platform that we are going to talk about. And of course, what are the benefits of joining NileWell? Before maybe we go into the sharing and, learning how to have an account, I will first tell you that NileWell is a platform that fosters collaboration between environmental researchers, scientists, and journalists. So here we are looking at connecting, sharing research, sharing data, and of course also building capacity and knowledge in science and, data-based journalism. So with that, small introduction, maybe you would ask, what am I going to gain from this? So let me say you're a journalist. So as a journalist, this platform will help you to connect directly with the scientists, okay? And connecting directly with the scientists, for example, Dr. Karen, you are getting credible, basically credible information for your stories. And this will help you actually, present these stories and people will take you more serious and it won't sound like a bar talk or just hearsay. So that's why as a journalist, you need to join this platform so that you can be able to access, these knowledgeable people, the scientists. And of course, if you're a scientist, what is there for you. Is it just, giving out your knowledge and that's it? No. As a scientist also, this is a platform that will help you share your research, okay? As you know, all of you, that sometimes it's hard for scientists to have their publications out because of some, nitty-gritties that they have to go through. But with this NileWell platform, you are able to, upload and share your research and, friends can have, a look at it. And also, the journalists can have some information they can use while writing the stories. And of course, also you're able to connect directly, with the journalists. For example, you have, maybe a research paper about, the shrinking lakes and you would love it to be out there.
Excuse me, Andrew?
Yes?
Maybe you can share your screen.
Okay, I haven't yet started, but I'm going to share in the meantime. I'm just trying to give a synopsis of what this is all about, why you need it, and then I can share the screen. So maybe let me go straight to, 5 minutes. So maybe again for the scientists, here you are able to access tools and also resources and media relations. And so let's go into that. I think I've given you some of the, the advantages of, joining this platform. I'll share now my screen and okay, I'm sharing now. Sorry about that. Just sharing it now. Just a sec. Okay, I think everyone can see my screen. Are we all there?
Yes, we are.
Yes, okay. Yeah, thank you so much. As a teacher, you don't like to speak to a class that is so quiet. So this is something that will introduce us to the whole aspect. So what you can do is you can try to open up a tab and type in NileWell. So NileWell, like you can see, the spelling is NileWell. So you type in nilewell.org. So short form of organization. You can see it here. I'm highlighting it if you're seeing my screen. So that's what it is. And it should give you a dialog box like what you see on my screen right now. So we have home, we have about, we have programs, and under programs, of course, we have data journalism mentorship, we have networks, we have science cafes, we have story grants, we have trainings. So lots of stuff to find out there. Then in the community, of course, we are looking at the community, the journalists and the scientists. Then we have resources. This is where you can find scientists research papers, and also maybe stories from journalists. Then of course, we have stories that have been made by journalists and of course have been shared on our platforms. So we go straight to the blue icon. If all of you can see the blue icon that has more like a human cartoon and the word connect. So when we click on this connect button, it should bring down a dialog box that has 3 elements in it. So one is create an account, one is search for members, and another one is login. For those of us that don't have an account yet, you are supposed to click on create account. So for my case, if I click on create account, because I already have an account, if I try to fill in what you see on my computer, it will show me that I already have an account. So let's try to do that. So for example, imagine I haven't had any account. So I'm a journalist, okay? So if you're a scientist, you can put yourself as a researcher. That's the other thing that I want to remind you about. A scientist qualifies to be a researcher. So as a journalist, I can put a journalist, then I'm from Uganda, of course. And my research interests could be as, as many as possible. So maybe water, environment. So maybe I can say water and environment, okay? Of course, the media house that I'm affiliated to, this is InfoNile. So some of you, might not have, the media houses or whatever institution you're affiliated to, but we encourage that at least you try to get something that, you're affiliated to, because this will promote kind of, a sharing of knowledge. So when we go to part 2 of that section, it should bring you like, what's your name? So my name is Andrew, and then my last one is Aijuka, and then the email is already there. So once I say create an account, so for example, in case I had not yet filled in the email, let me say I'm using InfoNow's email. So that's at .org, sorry. So as you can see down here, they say a valid email address. All emails from the system will be sent to this address, okay? The email address is not made public and will not be used if you wish to receive a password, So here they're trying to tell you the connotations of your security. And so now if you say create, if you click on create, I should receive an email, or you should receive an email in that particular email address that you did register. And after that, it should be confirming to you that actually this is the link for your new account. And then if you have the new account, so as you can see, it says Aijuka at infonow.org is already taken. So that means I already have an account. If I have an account, I just have to go back, okay? And then try to log in with my account, if at all I still recall it, which is something that I usually encourage people to do. For example, if you're creating an account, it is always better you create it either with your Google account or with your Facebook account. For those of us in Uganda, I wouldn't encourage Facebook, because with Facebook here, you have to put VPN, and sometimes the VPN takes you to Netherlands, and maybe sometimes Netherlands can't allow some stuff. So here I would advise maybe that we stick to Google. So if you have a Gmail, you can say I'm opening up with my Gmail account. So because I've already synced my email with this account already, I will just click on the Google, icon, and then it will have to bring me to my account, okay? But I don't advise you to do this if you're at all you're using like an internet cafe, because everyone will have now access to your account. So use this if at all you're only sure that you're using your laptop or your computer alone, okay? So as you can see, they give you the dashboard. So this is more like of the dashboard. So under the dashboard, you can see that we have lots of stuff. You have your name, you have your home, and of course they are showing you how many members you have connected with or how many members are following you. But the most important thing is above here. If you see where I'm clicking, there is an icon of like a manly head. And there are also 3 lines. So when we click on these 3 lines, it should bring you something like a dialog box that has something like member menu, okay? So under the member menu, we have the dashboard, we have, your profile as an individual, then we have a section where you can add your resource. So for example, you're a journalist, you want to put there your story, or you're a scientist, you want to add your research paper, this is the section to go to. If you want to know how many members maybe are into, this whole thing, you can browse. You can click on browse members. If you want to log out and you've had enough, you can log out. This is where you can see how many people are online. So I can see that Amani is online, and which is okay. So let me say that, of course, I've opened up, my account. So when you open up your account, you can come here and say my account, okay? If at all, maybe you want to know what's on your account. So your account basically has that. That's what it has. It has, the members you're following, your bio, and your resources. So let me say I'm a scientist or I'm a journalist and I want to add my story so that it can appear under the resources or under the stories, or under the home page where the news feed is coming in. So I will click on the add resources, okay? And this should be the last thing, of course. Then you can have time to explore more things at your own time. So under this, we can say, so you can see the dialog box says create my resources. So under this is where you put the title of your, let's say, research or story. So in this time around, let me say reclaiming Lake Wamala, okay? The story, is it in English or you need to specify? If it's in French or it's in Arabic, you can say maybe not specified or not applicable. So here we have the story is in English, and here they are telling you the resource category. So under resource category, it could be either a data viz, or data visualization. It could be a learning material. This could be like a PDF or a Word document. It could be a research also in form of a Word document, or a PDF. It could be a science story. It could be just a story or a link of a video or a podcast that you want to put there. So under this, maybe let's say it's a science story, okay? And then we have another dialog box here that says resource content or synopsis. So if at all we know what a synopsis is, this is just a small aspect of the story, like, an intro or something that is more like, telling of what the story is all about. So you could put here a synopsis of your research, and most research papers, of course, have synopses. So you could copy and paste it over there, and then come down where they will ask, of course, for an image. It would be nice if I told someone your research has maybe your image, or it has that particular topic you're talking about. Let's say you're talking about water. At least it would be nice to have an image of water, or whatever art cover that you may want your research paper or your story to have. Some people may use the thumbnail for the videos. Then, of course, we come down here, and for the videos, you can put your link here, but also still for the news, or for the print, like a story, that you've posted online, you can also still share a link here. Then also you can share the text. If at all, maybe it is a podcast, and maybe you also shared a script of the podcast, or the transcription of the podcast. You could also post the link here or post the text here. Actually, it is the link. You post the link to the text, okay? So you post it, you paste it here. But for now, I don't have those. But I think this one I have. I can put it there. For the YouTube channel, it's there. For the YouTube link is there. For the image, I might look for any other image that I want. I can go into my pictures, try to see. Since we are talking about water, we can say maybe, let's see what we can use. We can use maybe this. Let's use this, biodiversity photo. So I put my photo there. I've put my link there. I don't have the text link, but now this is the real deal. Now here we come, and then we are choosing what to put there. But however, you have to know that if at all you're trying to upload a video, it can't be possible because the limit is only 8 MB. So for the videos, I would advise that you always just post a link in the URL where they ask for the external link resource, and then you can leave this other for the guys that are doing print, and they can be able to upload a document that is less than 8 MBs. So when you're done with that, you can just say maybe preview. You would want to see what you're doing. So of course, yeah, they are telling fill out this field, okay? Which field is that they're trying to tell us? The alternative text, okay? So the alternative text, if you if you know what it is, they're saying maybe talk more about the picture that you've, that you've uploaded. So let me say maybe this is a picture. This is a picture. This is a photo showing biodiversity. Okay. Biodiversity. Okay. This is a picture showing biodiversity. And so if we are to preview and we see how our thing is going to come out, it should come out like this. So they are saying submitted by Mr. Juka Andrew on Thursday. And of course, because as an Infonal team, we want to have these things a bit, like proofread, or actually, we take some time to see if this material that we are trying to put on our platform is real. We don't want to have stuff and, we have people coming against us. So we try to take some time and we review whatever that you have to post. So it might not come instantly, that whenever you post, it will come on instantly. So the team has to go through whatever that you're trying to post, and then it can post it. So those are back-end things that probably maybe you, the user, might not want to know, or may not want to engage in. But all I can say is that that's the way you can be able to, upload your resources onto this platform. And then maybe one other thing that we should leave this. One other thing that maybe as a person you should know. So for example, I want to join, I want to find a scientist, I want to find maybe, a journalist to work with. So how do I get this person, So if you want to find maybe a scientist, we come to where we see, you see where there is Mr. Ajuka. So we click on there, and then they say search members. So when we click on search members, if we click on search members, so remember we got it from here. So when we say search members, so these are the members that we have in our community. So you can see there are lots of them. We have like, over how many pages. So basically, they will give you on your left-hand side, they will give you a dialog box that has something like, where to type a name. So for example, I'm looking for Mark, Dr. Mark Oktum. So I'll put in Mark, and then maybe say Mark is from Uganda. So at least you have to know something small about the person you're looking for. Or you can just go and search for scientists, and then maybe they bring for you, those are the people that, so maybe let me say I'm specifically looking for Mark, who might be a researcher. So when I click, after filling in those tabs, when I click on search, it will get me someone, okay? So this is Dr. Mark Oktum. And so if I say I want to view more, so for example, maybe I'm not sure, yes, he's a scientist, but what does he do? So here, of course, they bring me some, on his profile. So what we see here is that Mark is a researcher and of course works with the National Fisheries Resources Research Institute, and that's in Uganda. And one other thing that is really good with this is that you can connect, to your socials. So you can see here that Dr. Mark is on Twitter, Dr. Mark is on ResearchGate, Dr. Mark is on Freshwater Biodiversity Portal for Uganda, and of course also Dr. Mark is a subscriber to Google Scholar. So this is to help you in a way try to find, people to work with in order to make your stories better. If at all I want to maybe ask Mark a question, I can just come where you see the send message. So maybe let me say send message. Let me click on send message. I know Dr. Mark personal as a friend, so sending him a message won't really do any harm. So when I say send a message, it brings me this dialog box. So under the dialog box, you can see that my name is there, my email is there, and of course to Dr. Mark. So maybe let me say, I want to ask Dr. Mark about what? We've been talking about maybe fishes in Lake Victoria, okay? I want to ask Dr. Mark about fishes in Lake Victoria. So maybe that's my subject, and then I can go on, dear Dr. Mark, whatever that you have to write, dear Dr. Mark. Kindly, kindly share with me, kindly share with me any data on fishes in Lake Victoria. Okay. So you can be specific and say maybe in Uganda. Okay. Of course, show some bit of politeness. You can say thanks. The English doesn't recognize this, but of course I've learned that in science there is a word like fishes. So you can say thank you, regards. Okay, some bit of courtesy. Then of course, if you want to have a copy of your email, to send yourself a copy to your email address, you can just send a copy to yourself. So here I'm sending also a copy to myself so that I may know whether this thing has reached. Once I send, Mark should be in position to receive this in his email and also through the inbox of this platform called NileWell. And with that, friends, allow me to stop from there. I don't want to give you a lot that won't, be taken in such a short time. So for now, at least I hope that everyone knows how to create an account, at least on NileWell, and at least you know how to connect with people and also send them a message, or find a scientist or a journalist on the platform, and at least send them a message. One other thing maybe, you can try to follow people so that it is easier for you. For example, since I'm following Mark, it is easy for me. Whenever I just put in, Mark comes on, okay? So maybe with that, I hope to see more numbers coming on onto this platform. And with that, friends, thank you so much. And I would love to stop from here. To you, Delicate, thank you also.
Okay, thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you so much.
Andrew, can I ask a quick one?
Yo, sure.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think this is a very useful platform, especially for journalists. But I don't know whether you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I just realized that I think we're going to have more journalists than scientists. I don't know whether Infonel has a strategy for populating this platform with more scientists, because I think we need these people. We don't want to end up talking to ourselves. Yeah, how are we going to populate this platform with more scientists? Yeah.
Thank you so much, my brother. So as Infonel, we are trying to push this platform on each and every launch that we have for most of the projects, for most of the products that we have. And also, as Infonel, we have people that are working with us, coordinators that are working with us in over these 10 countries in the Nile Basin. And these coordinators, one of their roles is to make sure that they drive scientists to this platform and also journalists. Of course, we can't be the same numbers. Journalists might be a little more than the scientists, but all we have to do is to make use of the few that we have and also try to encourage more to join. The more we use this platform and the more people see the results that are coming from this platform, the more it would be easier for us to have more scientists join. Scientists are very skeptical people, especially when it comes to working with journalists. They have a bit of trust issues. They know that we're kind of, sometimes, report stuff, off. So that's why we are trying to make this so that whenever, for example, I'm working on a story on water, I can link up with the scientist who is into water, and then we can have factual information written, and whereby we are trying to also bridge that kind of trust gap. So we hope that wherever you are, if you work with the scientists, you can always appeal to them to join this platform, because this is something that will help all of us. When we have more, scientists on board and also more journalists on board, then the conversations become richer. Okay. So as Infonel, we are not seated. We have come up with avenues of how to get more scientists on board and also how to fetch more journalists on board. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you so much, Ronnie. I can't see any other question in the chat box, sorry, but I can see Fred had asked a question with regards to a lake in Rwanda, and Dr. Paul and Veverika had already responded to the question. Maybe just to encourage you to sign up on our platform, nilewell.org. And then you can be able to connect with other journalists from different countries within the Nile Basin, and also connect with other both journalists and scientists. Now, to wind up, I'd encourage you, as you continue tweeting, you can use our hashtag shrinking lakes, hashtag NileWell, and you can share your views on this topic. In case you'd like to republish this story, we have sent a link on the chat box. Shrinking lakes, you can be able to republish this story. Anyone with a query or maybe an issue that was not handled during this launch, feel free to also reach out to us, info@infonile.org. Now, I'd like to wind up this session. Thank you so much for everyone who has been able to attend, our journalists and scientists network. Those who have been able to share within your networks, your friends, we really appreciate. And all the journalists that made this possible, there were about 9 journalists that participated in making the Shrinking Lakes project a success. We really appreciate Dr. Veverika and Dr. Paul for squeezing time in your busy schedule to be here with us. We also really thank our partners, Code for Africa and GRS Biodiversity. And with that, we're looking forward to see you in our next projects and programs. Thank you so much for being here with us. Have a good evening.